Welcome to the public forum of the ordinary meeting of council of 17 April. General Manager, we have some formalities.
Yes, thank you, Mr. May. In relation to the public forum, I'll declare an interest in relation to the second speaker, and that speaker, Mr. Jamie Barraquette, will be addressing council on item 9.1. So I wish to declare an interest in relation to that. It's a non-pecuniary, however significant interest. It's non-pecuniary in the sense I've been on the board as a board member of Nunangola Regional Gallery since April 23, following council's resolution to have the general manager appointed to the board. And significant in that, following the council's resolution, I have been a member of the board since April 23. For the public forum, the Code of Meeting Practice requires only councillors to declare any conflict of interest in section 4.24. Whilst the code does not state all other persons must declare and manage conflicts of interest, as it does for conflicts of interest for council meetings, I've decided to take a cautionary approach and wish to declare an interest consistent with the declaration for council meetings. Given the nature of this interest in this matter, I will vacate the chambers with the Director's Service and Project Delivery to take the General Manager's chair during the Speaker's address as part of the public forum. Thank you.
We haven't got to go straight away because there's another lady who wishes to speak on another item first. Remind everyone to please turn your mobile phones off, and I'd advise that this meeting is recorded and broadcast, or this forum. The first person wishing to speak is Ms Jennifer Macquarie of the Robinson Business Chamber on item 8.1, the draft Robinson Village Management Plan.
Thank you, Administrator, and thanks for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Robertson Business Chamber today.
Just before you start, could I say that I don't have time limits. There's an opportunity.
I'm not going to take up my 5 minutes either.
That's just letting you know.
Thank you. So our members are really pleased to see the Robertson Place Plan on the agenda for today's council meeting, and we look forward to the plan being adopted and becoming a formal master plan for our village. It provides a pathway for improved housing options, a stronger local economy, a more connected community, and a more sustainable village. The draft plan includes a significant number of action items, many of which are intended to be led by council, and we understand that council intends to proceed with these in due course, subject to the availability of internal resources. There are also action items intended to be carried out by the Business Chamber and other local organisations, which we intend to initiate. As you know, we're a very active and proactive community. A priority for the Business Chamber is making the necessary amendments to the LEP and the Robertson DCP to enable the construction of more diverse and affordable mix of housing types to meet the needs of our citizens. The Place Plan recognises that we have a disproportionate number of large homes on large blocks and hardly any small, affordable dwellings to suit the older members of our community, the singles, the young people and workers on mid to low incomes. So the Chamber has spoken with the Robertson Community Association and Robertson Futures, and all three organisations have been actively involved in the Place Plan, and together we'll form a small committee to prepare a planning submission or proposal to amend the LEP controls and also the necessary amendments to the DCP. We may need to engage some specialists and we'll seek a grant to cover those costs rather than approaching council for that. In preparing the new controls, we'll draw inspiration from the unique character and flavour of our village. In essence, we're a bunch of Quimbies looking for quality in my backyard. Our proposed amendments will require the support of council, and we look forward to collaborating with council's planning staff to achieve our common objectives. In closing, we acknowledge both council and the Robertson community for the time and effort that's been put into the Place Plan, and we look forward to it being formally adopted and, more importantly, look forward to its intended outcomes being achieved. So that's it on the Place Plan, but I just want to say one other thing. I've noticed the closure of Main Street has been recommended not to proceed, which we're going to add some support to as well, so that's fantastic.
That saved me moving part 3 to the recommendation of the Place Plan. Look, if I just say that I think the way the council has cooperated, and maybe it's better to do this in council while I do it now, you mightn't be sticking around. I think the way the council and the community of Robertson has cooperated in this place plan is a case study for other villages or towns in the Shire. Regretfully, I find that some groups don't talk for the whole village, and you know, there are other views, and the council has to take all those into account, obviously, in the decision-making process. But it's wonderful that the three major groups in Robertson all came together. I know there was individuals who also came, but I think it's a case study for the other villages, and you know, I take my hat off to your community and the council staff and the consultants for the great job they've done.
Thank you. It's been a really good process, and it has brought the community together, and we're going to continue to work together because the place plan's only valuable if it's actually implemented, and we want to be part of that implementation. We know we can't leave it to council, and you've got a lot on your plate, so we're going to be proactive about it.
And as we know, you can move forward based on that place plan now. We haven't got to wait for DCPs and everything else, which is we're going to take time and money. Okay, thanks very much.
No worries.
Yeah. Can we note that the GM has left the chamber? The next one is Mr. Jamie Bereket, the chair of the Nunangulla board, in relation to item 9.1, the funding agreement.
Mr Mayor, I acknowledge the Gundagara people, traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and I pay my respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging. I'm here principally as a father of 3 children, secondly as a member of this community, but thirdly I offer service to this community by being chair of the board of the Southern Highlands Regional Art Gallery at Repton Park, commonly known around the traps as Nunangulla. Mr Mayor, you'll have before you today in Council a report from Council with recommendations at page 57 of your notes, and attached to that will be a core funding submission that the Gallery's made directly to Council. The proposal you're considering presents to you 3 options. First, to continue the present funding for a term of 5 years at $500,000 per year. The second, to continue that same funding but indexed to CPI, which would see a commencing figure for the first of those 5 years at approximately $620,000. And the third option, a larger proportion of the annual operating costs of Nunangulla, moving Council's commitment from a contribution of approximately 30% of our budget to 70% or $1.22 million, which we would suggest is closer in line with what other regional councils do to support their galleries. I wish to say at the outset how thankful we are to this council for its vision and support. We're proud of our principal partnership with this council and grateful for the efforts and work and funding that we've been provided to date. I'm offering that thanks, Mr May, not only on behalf of my board, but also the 130,000 people who visited the gallery since it opened 2.5 years ago. In the time you've given me, I want to address just 2 matters with you, Mr May. The first is the objective success of the gallery in this community, and the second is the value it offers to council. I expect, Mr Mayor, you receive lots of proposals in this role, and many of them are aspirational in that you're asked to approve something that's yet to be built or yet to come. What you have in Nunangulla, because of this period of 2.5 years we've had to start this gallery already, is objective benchmark evidence that means that there was a gap in the infrastructure in this community that it's filled, and in filling it, it's done exceedingly well and exceeded, in our view, all of the internal benchmarks we set for this gallery and the external benchmarks we can find in the larger community in New South Wales and Australia for regional art galleries. First, with a regional population of about 52,000 people in this area, against an average of 52,000 people visiting the gallery, we're running at an engagement rate of 100%. And most other regional galleries in New South Wales are running at just 60 to 80%. And this is only in our first 2 years where we're competing in those figures against galleries that are much more established and much better funded. In that period, we've displayed 650 pieces of art, but it's not the numbers that count. We've had internationally significant pieces of artwork in our gallery. hanging alongside artwork that's been created by artists and members of the community here, which is a very unique offering that we're very proud of. Most importantly, we've engaged with almost 6,000 school kids in just 2.5 years, and we've delivered over 150 programs. In addition, we've delivered more than 850 free or subsidised public programs, many of them specifically targeting the young, the Indigenous, the elderly and the disabled members of this community. Our public engagement rate is 4 times most other regional art galleries in terms of the delivery of those programs. And importantly for council, we believe our visitors across that period have numbered 52,000 tourists. And our tracking has them both tourists from New South Wales, nationally and internationally. The principal of the Mittagong Public School says Nunangulla's creative education program is an essential resource for this school. And a teacher from Oxley College says it's an indispensable asset for all schools in the region. One of the nursing homes that regularly visits us and participates in our program says access to the arts significantly impacts the well-being and quality of life of people with dementia. Nunangulla is an invaluable asset to us and them. The director of the National Gallery of Australia says about Nunangulla, it is the cultural destination of the Southern Highlands. It is an extraordinary asset for the community. And the Honourable Benjamin Franklin, the former Minister for Arts, himself a representative member of regional communities, and in that role probably has visited more regional galleries than any other represented figure presently serving, says it's the #1 tourist destination in the Southern Highlands. Every element of the operation is exemplary. It has deep engagement with the local community. I cannot think of an organisation in this region more worthy of support. At the end of this year, we deliver to this community the Archibald Prize. It's the first time it's been in this region because it's the first time this region has had a regional art gallery. It's incredible that we've got it, Mr. May, at such a young period in the life of a gallery. Many of the galleries who get this honour have been around for quite a long time. What's important about this for us is the people who could never practically afford or manage to get to Sydney to see this iconic show that's celebrated not only in Australia but around the world for our country, get to see it here after a 10 or 15 minute car or bus ride. And we're very proud to deliver that. What's even more exciting for us is we'll deliver the second time the inaugural Student Art Prize, and those works are going to be hanging in the gallery at the same time that the Archibald's hanging. And that's a great gift to this community. I'm told that Oxley College has more Band 6 visual arts recipients this year than ever before. And that's a school that we work with closely day to day. Nunangulla is really a story about community leadership. A little bit of hope along the tenor of the conversation you've just had with the speaker before me. This is about private citizens who've worked to fill a vacuum in local infrastructure for the arts and culture in this region. We think it represents incredible value to council, this unique model. First, in partnership with us, and you'll be aware from our presentation, Mr. Bay, at a fraction of the cost, we've delivered many of the services that you're directly aiming to deliver in your arts and culture strategic plan. And we've identified each one of those that we've met on your behalf. Second, it's been achieved without council having to make any capital funding. At the time at which this proposal was put up to council, there are figures there of other councils that have had to go and build their own regional arts centre at the cost of tens of millions of dollars. This construction was funded entirely with private citizens' money and grants from Create New South Wales without any burden on the purse of this council in terms of capital funding, to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. Thirdly, in presenting our budget to you at $1.75 million, we're seeking from council approximately 70% of those monies. But in arriving at that budget and setting that contribution level, we're seeking less contribution per resident and less per gross council revenue than any of our sister galleries in regional New South Wales. And in the report, you've got tracking that shows across at least 5 we demonstrated that are close to 70 to 80 to 90% of funding from their council. We're presently, if you went for option 1 or 2, sitting at close to 30% of our budget. So we think we present incredible value for you. The philanthropy of private citizens has been bridging the gap for us for the last 2.5 years. They need leadership from council so that we continue to get their support and can seek their support. Obviously, in our proposal, we think this council should do more to bridge the gap. We're not naive in relation to the demands on council, and we're grateful for whatever support we can get. We're primarily most grateful for the acknowledgement in that report from council that you have, Mr May, that we have value to this council and to this community, and we acknowledge that. Which proposal across the three we receive is obviously a matter for you ultimately, Mr May. Ngola's engagement is, we suggest, for this council, one of the deepest and most diverse ways it can reach its residents. And some of the residents that are at the marginalised end of our community. We engage with nursing homes, we engage with people with dementia and disability, we engage with Indigenous youth, we engage directly with schools. Today is an ordinary day for Ngunnawal. 15 children participated in a workshop run during the school holidays by our creative arts teacher that we fund and offer. And tonight, in a sold-out audience, 100 people will see Vincent Namatjura, one of Australia's most endearing and famous artists, talk to members of this community. I commend the submission to you, Mr May, and I commend the partnership that we have with this council.
And you had a busload from Murray's there this afternoon as well. Look, I can't argue with anything you're saying, but I have a bit of a challenge in relation to my role at the council. If you look closely at most of what I've done, it's status quo stuff to keep things rolling, however, accelerating things. And if you look closely, you'll see that I've been pretty true to that.
Yes.
The one thing that does exercise my mind, I was going to ask the staff, but you might be able to help me earlier. The original, I know there was no council money, and look, and I've been there, done that, if I could say, with the gallery,
Yes.
and the builder, and who I knew through another life, what was in the business case you prepared in getting grants from the state and philanthropic money? Was it predicated on a continuing contribution from the council?
It was. So for Create New South Wales to partner with us in the way they did, they required that commitment that at that time was a 5-year commitment that we secured from council. And built into that commitment, both in relation to council's initial resolution and the deed we now have with you, is the idea that that would be reviewed for continuation. The difficulty, and both documents and council's report makes, is that the nature of the work that this gallery does, these exhibitions are planned 2 to 3 years in advance. And so it's become necessary to continue this arrangement, and that's why we're with you today.
Mm.
In relation to the first matters you spoke of, a significant deficiency with respect to the initial funding, and there was no allowance for CPI. And unsurprisingly, that commitment of $500,000 from the council came years prior to the actual construction and commencement of the works. And
So that was my real, I don't want to catch you up, that was my real question. So before you turned the first sod of soil, the business case was agreed by the council. I don't think it was, is what I was led to believe, and there ended up a bit of a circus in relation to the 2.5 million. And then when the current general manager arrived, she wanted to ensure some certainty in relation to it. And I suggested to the general manager, with such a large financial contribution on a regular basis from the council, we need input into the board, and not at the political level, but at the administration level, not the administrator, the administration level. But what does it still exercise my mind is, was it a continuing grant from the council and the state? That was what somebody else might be able to...
Well, the state was a one-off grant for capital funding for construction. We apply like all organisations for an annual grant from Create New South Wales. You get it some years, you don't, it varies. We don't have a continuing funding arrangement with the New South Wales government.
And state and federal governments, no matter which party, are great at doing that, and then throwing the baby to the ratepayers, and this is cost shifting, and it happens all the time. But you can't criticise them for it. And look, one of the realities of this is, and the CFO would be happy, that we're not having to depreciate all this on our books, which is another thing exercising my mind in what a fair amount is.
Well, Mr. May, the original motion in 2008 said 5 years to be reviewed in the 5th year, which is where we're at. The deed of agreement that council signed with us requires a review in the 5th year, which is where we're at. Financially, as I say, it's prudent for the gallery to have this commitment in place. We're about to enter our final funding year, and we can't secure the works we need without long-term funding. And your report acknowledges that with the proposal for a further 5 years. Proposal 2 of the 3 arguably remedies the absence of CPI over that significant period that's elapsed. In terms of a safety net in relation to this decision for you, we've shown you in the business proposal that most councils, regional councils, are getting substantially more relevant to their residency rate than we are. This is an incredibly good deal for council with respect. You're not having to depreciate it. And I think from memory, and it was 5 years ago, the most recent council to go and do this spent, I think, between $10 and $30 million on a new regional arts
Oh, look,
complex.
I can't argue any of that.
Any of that.
There's no question about that. And look, you've done an enormous job. You've filled a gap, and it's a destination. It's really as simple as that. But I have the challenge as, in effect, the caretaker, and trying to address issues. And, we have actually addressed, because there was no guarantee you were going to get the 500 if the council came back, and we accelerated that to make sure that we had you covered. But you said that in 2008, that's when they agreed to the...
2018 was the first council
2018, they agreed to
agreed to the 5-year funding with a review in year 5,
Yeah, okay.
which with respect gives you the mandate that you're seeking with respect to do this,
Yeah.
and it may be preserve the status quo. I just want to correct for you one thing,
Yep.
Mr. May. The first is that our answerability to council comes through the deed, and we've got a range of deliverables to council for transparency. There's no commitment for us to have the general manager on the board. It's not a commitment in that agreement at all. We do that voluntarily because we think it's positive engagement, and it's been tremendously valuable for us to have the benefit of that wisdom and knowledge from the general manager in the way we operate things.
Just to make it very clear, the general manager has not said a word to me about any of this, which is appropriate. And to be quite frank, the first thing I knew about it was when I read on the agenda, and I think I phoned you on Monday with several questions, I shouldn't say you, the CFO on Monday, with several questions. But the CFO has just pointed to me the decision of 2018, which I'll read, because I was going to ask you that question too before we start at 3:30. Anything else you want to say about it?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I won't leave you high and dry. Is anybody else in the gallery got anything they want to raise on the business papers? Okay, well, thanks very much, and we'll
Thank you,
start the
Mr. Mayor.
meeting in 5 minutes. Ta.